Welcome to Planning Phase Syndicate, episode 94. It's every citizen's duty to challenge their leaders. Tonight, we decided we're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to talk about some off-meta lists that we are doing for everybody that we thought would be fun. Now that Worlds isn't in play, we have a couple of months till Store Champs start, and we could just kind of mess around and have some fun with pilots that maybe we wouldn't get to play. We are also going to finish off our list archetype rankings that we put on hold before Worlds for our roll call Academy 101 series. We decided that we were going to finish those off tonight, even if it means we're going to cut some of JJ's lists out here. And then we also are going to have a conversation about some of the fixes that AMG put in play. We've been about, a little over a year into the new meta, or the 2.5 meta. And AMG specifically put changes in to make the game more playable. What we want to do is kind of look at if high initiatives are too prominent and if they have not really fixed that portion of the game. With that being said, let's bring in my two co-hosts for tonight. Alex, Benchwarmer, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing quite well. How are you?
Good. And JJ, the Jets and the Lions will both do better than the Giants this year. So you should probably switch teams.
Damn, that hurts because it actually might be true. Damn.
Seems like you need to get a new team there, buddy.
Yes, no. The only two teams I'm very proud of right now is the New York Giants and Team Endgame winning their week this week against Team NJO in the Nickel City League. Here we are currently 3-1 here, right behind Team Punishers for control of the division, and I am excited. Next week we're going to face off against Team Havoc, which is only 1-3 so far. I actually just did matchups earlier today with Crispy, who's the team captain for Team Havoc, and it's going to be a really interesting week next week. And man, I gotta say, the man right here, he is the one who's been getting these games and these wins over here, Mr. Chris Tanner, as well as the rest of my team here, Cam Murray, Dr. Fulton, and Patrick Stinson. You guys are doing great getting those wins for Team Endgame and making up for my faults because I've lost 2 in a row so far. So, but really happy for Team Endgame, and I can't wait for us to really bring it to Team Havoc this next week.
Yeah, and I think you took a bye this week, and Crispy took a bye this week, so there is a bunch of buys. Buy and buy.
Oh yeah, buy and buy. That's fine. I mean, I know nobody wants to face Crispy, and I definitely wanted to get my buy-in before the switch up coming up for mid-season. So yeah.
So are you saying we officially for Team Endgame will be switching factions?
Yes, 100%. We will be switching factions once we come up to that week 7, I believe.
Yep. Guess who's getting Rebels? JJ's gonna give Tanner Rebels. That's what's gonna happen. I mean, Tanner's gonna feel very sad that he has to play Rebels.
Hey, 2 of them made top 4. They're statistically the best faction right now.
Yeah.
Don't mind that the other one came in 69th. No one mentions that. We're good.
I mean, they have gauntlets. They're like a fire spray. I mean, you can easily run that. They don't 4
have the most useless gauntlet. That's the Republic.
Exactly.
No,
exactly.
No, it's not. The Empire has the most useless gauntlet.
Oh, that actually,
because it's 8 points,
has been played before. No one in the right mind has played Bo-Katan for the Republic.
Corey has, and I have.
I'm sorry.
Anyway, maybe we'll get back to that, Alex, and maybe we'll have to have a Republic off or something.
Okay.
Your gauntlet and some other faction versus the Republic gauntlet. Maybe we'll put you and Corey on stream. That's what we'll do. You and Corey can do it. All right. Well, to begin with, what I want to do is let's run over Nickel City Season 3 League Week 4 results. I do not know who won the last game between Havoc and Mega Milk. I gave it to Havoc since Ephra was on 1 with 2 ships behind her, and she was stressed, so I don't think she could do a stop maneuver. So I went ahead and gave the win to Havoc, even though it's not really that much difference. The only difference would be whether Havoc is in 5th or 6th place. But in our division, the share division, Punishers are over us with more points scored as well as more games won. Then we are in 2nd place in our division, and then it goes Magic, NJO, Havoc, and Mega Milk. Now, these are 10-week series, correct, JJ?
It should be 10.
12?
Yeah, it should be 10. Should be 10.
Okay. So if it's a 10-week series, then there you go. We do need a few more weeks of wins to guarantee cut for this. If you look at the Sunny Division, V Team, Sandy's team has commanded a 4-0 in weeks. That's pretty good, I think. I think that's pretty decent. 4-0. It's almost like they think they're the Lions, and then it's going to just come crashing down on them.
We were 4-0 in the preseason. We went 0-16. Just saying. 4-0 preseason, 0-16 regular season. We're good. Can't do that anymore. There's 17 games. We're good.
Order 66 is close behind with their win this week. Fox, CFIS are both tied at 2-2, and the Tinder Gods come in at 1-3. And I don't know, the Bushmasters are. I don't even know how you say their name, so I'm just gonna call them the Bushmasters. Is that what it is, JJ?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yep.
All right, you should know this. You're the captain. They are 0-4 this week. So if you look at overall division points, I put them all together. Essentially, we come in ranked 4th. We are the last of the 3-1s, but not by much here. And we just need to keep getting those weekly wins, and I think we'll be close to the top there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even though we aren't really blowing our opponents away, what matters is that we're getting the amount of wins that we need in order to win each week so far, and we have a great team that's been able to bring in those games and get those clutch wins when we need them. Absolutely. So far it's looking great for Team Endgame.
And you know what I learned? Don't run scum jank and think you're gonna win. Just don't do it. It's not worth your time.
Sometimes
my first week was kind of scum jank. So
still,
not that scum has that much meta, but
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they made top 8. You got Hondo.
They do have Hondo. Actually, we had on stream a Hondo and Boba game this week, and it was pretty fun. I liked it. I don't know if I'm sold on Hondo, but I do like playing Hondo. And I didn't get to yell Hondo because I was the only one on stream. If it would probably be weird if I yelled Hondo every time Hondo did something.
It's like heroic.
Yeah. You're legally obliged to scream heroic every time you do it. I feel bad for everyone around me because I do that 5 or 6
Especially
times
once you start drinking. Once you guys start drinking, then it was all balls to the walls. It's like, all right, I don't give a shit. Scream heroic.
Just because I didn't bother to move my beer can and improperly set up my chips doesn't mean I have a problem.
All right. Well, let's move on to our roll call segment. And we're going to do lists first, I think, because I think this is fun. I like lists. And we've done let's do meta crap all the time. So I put a call out today, and we got a couple of lists submitted. One of my lists actually comes from Crispy, essentially. But I put a call out, thought it would be fun to do, kind of some little off-type meta lists. I do know there will be some points changes, especially in CFI or CIS. I'm guessing we're getting it across the board, but definitely in CIS, there will be some points changes. And I think that's it's probably due, but I'm not happy about it. So hopefully we get some really cool new ships in CIS that we have not played before. But tonight we have Qual 3 has a HMP droid gunship And Alex, why don't you read that list down?
Okay, so it is DGS 286, the only HMP with Torp slots, which is presumably why this is taken because they're all 5 points. He has Ion Torps, K2B4, Grievous, Dark One probe droids, munitions failsafe, and the repulsor stabilizers. And then he's got 3 bombardment drones with proxy mines and independent calculations. He has 2 separatist drones with Discord missiles and independent calcs, and then DFS 081 with Discord missiles and independent calcs. For kind of a terrifying 7 ship list.
Yeah, this list is going to do a little bit different. The K2B4, right, is there to say, hey, I want to ensure that my droids are forcing you to make poor choices. I ran the Watt version, like a Watt version, for a while. I love Watt. I think Watt, if Watt had a few more loadout points, Watt would probably be worth running all the time. But with only 7 loadout points, really all you can put is K2B4 and composure and impervium plating.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, for those who don't know, DGS 286 is the HMP droid that allows you to transfer a calculate token from one of your friendlies to that particular ship, and it works really, really well with K2B4 and General Grievous crew on it. So essentially, you would force your opponent to either let you spend a calculate to add or evade results to your die, or they will take a strain. And then you have General Grievous, which allows you to cancel a hit or crit that goes through during the neutralize result step there. So essentially, you can waste a lot of energy trying to burn down this tech droid carrier in the HMP, while the rest of the list there gets to throw out a lot of different things at you between proximity mines and Discord missiles. This list definitely has a lot that you have to contend with. So it's really great.
Yeah, and they're all I3, so they all move at the same time, do whatever you want. And 286 there has the highest loadout of other HMPs. For the cost of kind of slightly negative, ability, but you do have like independent calculations. You can still share your calculate. Like you get 2 of them, so.
Yeah, your bombardment, you're not burning all 3 bombardment drones down in one turn. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 if you're lucky, but not 3. So I actually, and TJ can attest to this, I actually have kind of a similar list to this that I wanted to put on the table. I really hope that HMP goes down to 4 points and keeps the loadout. That would make me super happy if I could have an HMP 4.20 loadout so I could keep this. I changed it up. Instead of K2B4, I went with Kraken. This is what I would call the assault version of that. And this has 2 holocrons, a iron assembler, all with energy shells, and then I did 2 Bactoid prototypes with thread tracers and energy shells. Basically, you could set up 2 mini formations, and then I put 32C in there, another bomber, so that bomber can come in and just say, hey, I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to plasma torp something, I'm going to jam something, I'm going to do something crazy. But I actually had built a very similar type list so that I did drop Grievous for Kraken, though. You could drop probe droids if you want and go back to Grievous. I don't know if probe droids are super great anymore.
Well, when you have something like double thread tracers in the list, you probably don't need the Dark One probe droids. But the other list didn't have the thread tracers, so I can respect that because, free target locks essentially. It's pretty good. Mm-hmm. And you get to maneuver your Dark One probe droids, which means you can legally slow play people with a 7 ship list by maneuvering them every turn.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like an 8 ship list. So
I thought those were do that, though.
Those are 2 fun lists. I have not attempted to put this out because the HMPs usually just die. They just like to die. So it's really hard to want to do that. You could take the torpedoes and the probe droids off and put a shield upgrade. But again, you're only one green dice. But I do think this would be fun to put on the table. I will tell you that. Too many swarms and an HMP in the center or an HMP on the side. You're gonna ion torpedo somebody at range 3, side slip, do it again the next turn. You can't spend your lock, so like you always have it on there. And once you ionize something, then everything else is just gonna energy shell or go in range 1 and get you. So
I kind of wonder.
Similar.
Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead. I was just say it's kind of similar with this list too, because you could literally ionize somebody, discord them, or proxy mine them. It's almost the same thing.
Yeah. I was just wondering if we took off ion torps and munitions failsafe and put on like homing torpedoes, how that would be. Just because that's a really nice anti-ace kind of thing, but I definitely can see where ion torpedoes would make a really good case for ioning people. It's no fun.
Yeah. And as long as you aren't on the gas cloud, you could be ionized, and I can have my locks on you. So,
Yeah, and especially if you can ion somebody onto a Discord missile shot, it's totally worth it. It's really good.
See, this is why I'm going to bring Scum Dash with gas clouds, so I don't care if you target lock me.
All right, we'll go on to JJ. JJ has a homing torpedo swarm. JJ, right. What is your weird scum list that I don't think I own enough of these ships to fly?
So this was kind of a play on a Republic archetype that we saw early on when we saw the Z95s come out before the Siege of Coruscant. Kind of takes that same concept and applies it to scum here. So it's a 6-ship scum list here, starting with Lima Kai in the Y wing, with a targeting synchronizer, R3 astromech, and ion cannons, followed by Sirisu with swarm tactics, cutthroats, and homing torpedoes. Bosk in the Z95 with cutthroat, homing torpedoes, and contraband cybernetics. Sunny Bounder with homing torpedoes. Leighton Ashera with homing torpedoes and cutthroat. And Quentin Joss with cutthroat and homing torpedoes. So the object of this particular list is to have Lima Kai enable the target locks if possible. With this list, being able to grab 2 different target locks, which allows the rest of the list to have 2 different options in shooting the homing torpedoes and being able to set up a lot of shots on a single target there. Sirisu having the swarm tactics allows her to bring up either Sunny Bounder, most likely, or Leighton to Initiative 5 to get those homing shots at Initiative 5 and start punishing the opponents and really burn them down. The opponent has the option to either take the damage, which it becomes a more difficult choice, especially with homing torpedoes. You start suffering critical damage, or they'll start attacking you with 4 die attacks, and they can potentially do a lot of damage there for you. Cutthroat helps to regen those charges for those munitions, and thus keep on enabling the cycle for these ships to go in there. So yeah.
So why did you go with homing torpedoes and not like homing missiles? Just out of curiosity.
Well, it essentially, if I'm picking my targets, I want the homing missile to hit first, so that way I can strip shields, and then homing torpedoes to guarantee crits if they decide to take the crit damage.
Okay.
Yeah, the range difference is the big key there. But if you can range control, then you can hopefully maximize the potential of those damages. So.
Yeah, I feel like with the targeting synchronizer, if I had that locked, just that homing missile, I feel like at that range 3 would be a bigger threat. But
right,
I totally see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I mean, crits are terrible. You don't want that, and they're better for salvage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if you're able to, get a lucky direct hit to kill somebody faster, then that saves you an additional shot that you need to take.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
That's fair.
So why Lima Kai?
Lima Kai's ability, if Lima Kai is able to basically outmaneuver an enemy ship, it gets a free target lock if it's in its forward half arc. So that could potentially set up a target synchronized attack on an enemy if they're facing down the rest of the list there. So it basically opens up the targeting option for the rest of the list if they ignore Lee Mackay, and Lee Mackay is able to get behind the enemy essentially, or around the enemy.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you can essentially get a free lock with her. I mean, you can just take the lock action, but, free locks are really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the R3 targeting synchronizer. That's kind of dirty.
Yeah, really great. Yeah.
If only she had one more payload slot so you could put on bomblet generator.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. So my rebel list, I came up with a rebel list that I stole some from JJ and some from Alex. But essentially, this is corn horns jamming baby here, right? So the difference is JJ originally had what did you have in there? Baby
Wedge.
Wedge?
Boy Wedge. Yeah, Boy Wedge.
Hey, I had that.
And I swapped Boy Wedge out for Wes Jansen because if I'm going to fly T7 or T65s, I'm going to fucking fly Wes because it annoys the hell out of people. And it makes people angry. So, and I guess if I'm going to fly something to make people angry, here you go. So the idea here, right, is you have Kraken, you have three I5s, Cornhorn, Wes, everybody obviously likes Cornhorn. And then you have Plasma, Proton, and Proton Torpedo all coming in typically to one ship in a turn. And if you have Wes shoot first, you can jam after you shoot, and then it makes everything else more viable. You can also have Kraken shoot first, give Wes a double modded shot, and then go kind of from there. So... and then Garvin is in there, obviously, just to give focuses back for defense. And Keo is what I would call like a pocket ace, though I don't know how to fly Keo very well. But you can ask JJ because he eliminated my Keo pretty quickly the other night.
How?
Let's just say I had some really good dice. I basically rolled like 12 natties in a row. So, yeah.
Now, Keo is legitimately one of my favorite ships for 3 points. It would probably be the best one if it wasn't for, like, Finn.
Yeah.
Or a bunch of TIE fighters.
Yeah. And I chose Garvin in this list over Tycho, only because I think that in this list with Garvin and giving that focus back, it seems pretty good for everybody. Because you could give it to anybody around you, right? So... if you're not getting shot, if everybody's focusing on Keo, you can give it back to Keo. All sorts of crazy different things that you can do with it. So now let's find Alex's. Alex has a rebel list.
I do.
Somewhere. There is Alex's rebel list.
Yes, this was a slight variation of the list I played against you. This is Sheathapede Fen Rao with K2SO and R4. Not surprising on those upgrades. Wes Jansen, my boy, elusive proton torps munitions failsafe. Jack Borkins, boy Jack, boy Garvin, and then Keo with elusive and conch missiles. Kind of like yours, a little bit more alpha strikey. Like you get that I6 coordinate from Fen Rao to set up any sort of multiple shots you want. You got the K2SO thing. You can, you can, I don't know, roll up with like Jack Porkins, right? Bump into someone, take that red focus, jettison off the stress, coordinate him with Fen Rao, take the lock to be the range 1 of that advanced proton torpedo, and then I don't know, have Kraken shoot and have him barrel roll off the target so he's no longer getting shot at range 0. Whatever you want. Like, there's a lot of redundancy kind of built into that list. And worst comes to worst, Jack Porkins, 1 health, system phase, give him that K2SO droid, have him jettison off the stress, and he dies and he just one straights into people and kills them all in the system phase. And I can always respect something like that.
Fair enough. I do like Jack, and I do think that's another one of the pilots I want to put on the table. So.
Oh, Jack is so good for like 4 points. As long as you are able to do like have him get the extra actions with Fen Ra, or give him a calculate with K2SO, or have Kraken next to him or something. Just really good.
Yeah, and Fen Rao also being able to deny mods to for a particular ship, just really strong, especially when you're throwing an advanced proton torpedoes into it. It could really devastate a ship.
Yeah, or worst comes to worst, Garvin shoots first and passes focus off the Jack, right? Like it's a lot of redundancy. I don't have Kraken in that list in this version of it, but you have a coordinator, right? Like Penrao's a rear arc. He doesn't have to be in the fight. That's kind of the whole point. But denying people mods, super good.
Yeah.
All right. Now we'll go on to JJ's Falcons that are on fire, which is kind of weird seeing Lando in there instead of Ray. So JJ, why do we have a 4-ship resistance list with Lando instead of Ray?
Well, as a person who used Ray for such a long time, I actually did this just to have some variety in it here. It did have it did I did have a little trouble on like how I wanted to properly load both of these out here. So I now run it down here. So starting with Poe Dameron in the YT 1300 with Trick Shot, Heroic, Shui, Crew, Contraband Cybernetics, and Ray Gunner. That particular loadout was a little funky for me because I didn't have access to Corsella, who I really wanted on Poe for this particular build, but I wanted Lando Pilot as well with Corsella for his ability here. So I opted for Chewie because it does provide me the potential hit to crit conversion for free with its ability. And if you have two large ships that has a lot of hull, Chewie can reliably regenerate those charges there for that conversion. Then Lando Calrissian with Heroic, Corsella, Finn Gunner, some Contraband Cybernetics, and Race Millennium Falcon title, being able to coordinate all the ships with his charges really helps put the power for the defensive and offensive potential for all the different ships in there, and just be a general nuisance there for it. Adding Finn into it was nice, just so I can get the heroic off reliably on Lando, and potentially use target locks for offense for Lando to get more consistent dice on it. With it, I have Jarek Yeager with Deadeye Shunt, Heroic, and 9G8, which is the target lock reroll, and then I put a targeting computer on Jarek, so that way Lando has those rerolls, and then BB-8 with automatic targeting priority and Han Solo crew to round off the list. Jarek and BB-8 can be those objective grabber pieces, while Lando and Poe can go in and mow down whatever they need to. So
quick question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird seeing Finn not in a Finn pod. So
yeah,
we'll just say that.
Yeah.
But I'm happy because I hate Finn with a passion.
Yeah.
But why did you choose Contraband over FTC?
So, are you talking about Lando or Poe?
Well, either. I mean, like.
So I did consider FTC, but after my game with Lou, where he tried to use M9G8 and then forgot that he could accidentally turn off his own FTC with the friendly target lock, I kind of felt like that would work against what I will. Honestly, I could change Poe's Contraband into FTC for that and just leave the lock on Lando. So it is fluid, but generally that's why I kind of avoided FTC because of the interaction of M9G8.
Yeah, I would also say it's weird not seeing Notorious on Poe, but
a lot of people don't run Notorious on Poe for some reason. I don't get it personally, but in this list, I mean, you have two i5s and an i6, so it's not like stapled on there. I will say not having engine upgrade on Poe kills me, though.
I know. So I did consider it for this one because I wanted to have Poe to have access to that white boost. but then that leaves me with 1 point, and I can take off heroic and have 3 points left for a crew. And there's not much other than maybe
It's like
novice tech.
freelance slicer, novice tech. I ran novice tech. I mean, I wouldn't have Chewbacca on there. I would just throw that somewhere else. Actually, I'd probably throw it on Lando. But you know, I don't know. It's hard running Lando without like either Han Solo or C-3PO crew too, because that also activates his ability. And if you have BB-8 at 2, like you bring in BB-8 for 2 points, you can C-3PO him across the board, and then get additional actions with Lando. It's kind of dirty. Throw in
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Was it Larma Daisy, the one that you can jam while you're still stressed? Crew on BB-8, put Lando on or put Han on Lando, so you get the evades while also focusing. There's a lot of silly shenanigans you could do.
I did not consider that. That's actually pretty good. Yeah.
I did some double Falcon BB-8 and possibly Finn or Yeager kind of shenanigans list. So I was just like, there's so many cool possibilities you could do. That's all janky.
Nice.
I love it.
All right. So my last list is an 8-ship swarm. Similar ideology, but Tanner said, why do we not run the kaleidoscopes? And that's what I'm going to call them. I don't care what he
Kaleidoscopes.
They're kaleidoscopes to me. So I have 2 Bactoid bombers, both the thread tracers and energy shells, 3 kaleidoscopes, all with energy shells, elusive, and munitions fail safe. Iron assembler, same thing. Then we have 1 holocron droid with energy shells and independent calculates, and then Volan DOS standard loadout, or in my opinion, the standard loadout you run with Volan with the shield upgrade, Predator, and Deadman switch. So essentially, you have a tri-fighter that doesn't like to die super often, but gets focuses all the time unless you roll blanks. So you roll blanks, Volan dies. If not, Volan lives. You could switch Predator to Elusive. I actually, to be honest with you, I really wish he had 2 talent slots so I could just run Predator Elusive on him. That would be the best build for him, in my opinion. But AMG doesn't like us that much. And so the idea is you run into mini swarms, essentially, with the Bactoid bombers. And they're since everything is I-1 except for Volan DOS, you have 2 little mini swarms that can run around the board, and then 1 objective getter, essentially, which I would just call the Iron Asshole, because he could just sit on a rock. He doesn't have to do anything. He can do whatever he wants. Yeah, so that's kind of how that list is built, and the idea is you run the bombers in the back, so they take a little bit less damage. You could drop independent calculates if you really wanted to. And then you would be able to share calculates, because the kaleidoscopes can't share calculates at all.
Yeah, they modify it for organics. Yeah.
But they can't share focuses when they die.
And target locks. So
yeah, there you go.
And I played almost this version against Zach last night or the night before. I don't remember. I played a game with Zach the other day. That was pretty fun. Maybe it was Friday. Fuck, I don't remember anymore. I don't know what day it is anymore. But I played I played a similar list with Zach, and I did okay. Not great, not horrible. But I haven't flown 8 ships in, I don't know, it's been like 8 months now, maybe 9 months. And he told me I would never put this on the table at locals. But I own all these ships, and there's a high probability I might put this on the table tomorrow. Depends on how lazy I get. So. Then the last list that we have is Alex's Republic list.
I was actually testing this out for a little bit because, you know, I'm such a massive fan of Sync Council. I'm just like, what? Initiative, whatever. What's that initiative? I have Oddball. I have Contrail. They're 5s. We're good. So it's Oddball, Tearfond Valley Run, Pro Torps, R4P, Sync Council, Contrail, Dedicated. Have to have it in every single list, let me tell you. R3, Sync Council, Thermal Debts, Jag. It's the SOC Jag. Already has Sync Council like built in. It's perfect. Don't need anything else. Gavin Sykes. the Naboo no one's ever played in their life, with the Crit Droid R7A7, Protorps, and Saint Council, and then Sicko with Dedicated, because you need more on your list, Agile Gunner, and 7th Fleet Gunner. You can kind of swap out 7th Fleet for Barrage Rockets, depending on how aggressive you want to be. But this list is kind of fun. And mostly because Gavin Sykes is kind of funny. He, as long as he went faster than you, he gets to reroll all of his blanks for free, offense and defense.
You're probably going faster if you're in one of those little N1s. So
yeah, I mean, you're a defender, right? You have to go 3. The law tells you to get that evade.
That's great.
But the really nice thing is that both him and Jag are 3s, right? So if anyone shoots around Jag at all in his side arcs, you get a lock on him with Jag. Jag shoots first, he can pass the lock off to Gavin, and then Gavin can actually shoot. Gavin will never use his lock, besides the fact that you have a lat, because he re-rolls all of his blanks. So then he can continue passing it down the chain. It's actually a lot of really kind of cool things in there. I mean, you also get the oddball, hit someone, range 0, do the red focus. Oh, that's a red action. I get a target lock at anyone in my bullseye. You just generate free locks off that. Contrail's got 2 locks. It's super fun. It sucks if you're playing aces, but it's really fun.
Yeah, if you play aces, you probably you got some saddies there.
As long as you keep Gavin back, as long as you hold people back and then snag a lock off Jag or something, you can kind of build it. It's just kind of a pain. But I like Gavin. He's the only Naboo with a mod slot, which is why you run him. In addition to the inherent synergies with having a lad reroll your stuff so you don't spend your target lock kind of thing. And then being the same, him with Jag that's the combo. No one sees that coming. It's super dirty. I love it.
Yeah, it is.
Well,
it is pretty dirty. Yep.
Yeah, I like it. I think you should put that on the table, Alex.
I have. It's fun. I racked Ryan's 6FO list until he won at the end of the game from dice. But I was racking him the whole game.
Well, all right. Well, let's move on to our roll call segment. So here, what I thought we would do is we're going to finish up our pilot rankings for list archetypes real quick. I think that was something we promised everybody months ago. So let's just finish it up before we get into the end discussion of the night. But just to kind of do a quick recap, what our goal was is, right, we wanted to do is define the building blocks for the archetype, talk about, the philosophy for creating these archetypes. We wanted to also dissect the list for strengths and weaknesses, review scenario interactions, and then break down specific archetype lists, how they can be versatile, if they're not versatile. And in a second, we'll go over the actual archetypes that we created. But to begin with, what we have is our archetype ranking. And essentially, we have D through S tier. D tier is fun to play, has a unique reason to play, but it's not really that competitive. C tier kind of excels at one of the types of scenarios, has at least one competitive list in the field, but it's probably not super awesomely competitive. B tier is what we call in the middle. In good hands, somebody can really make it work. Probably not super awesome all over the place, but it is a 50-50 squad. A tier means it's going to crush the majority of people. The lists have extremely high potential with high caliber players, but it's not an auto type win list. And then S tier is pretty much what I would consider an auto type win list for the most part. Most anybody can pick it up. Greg would call this a fire spray. Essentially, if you're a really good player, you could take these type of lists and just dominate the field with them. Is that fair, guys?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right. So now let's look at here is our archetypes. We have a salad, an alpha, we have an ace, a beef style, control style, swarm style, and dual class list. We already ranked our alpha strike lists, our ace lists, and our swarm lists. But we have 3 other ones, plus what I would consider a dual class list, which we probably aren't going to rank. I don't know if we're going to really rank those. Those are going to be a little bit harder to rank, I think. But we'll get into that in a second. Let's start off with our salad list here. And JJ, briefly give us what salad lists are.
So salad lists typically range between 4 to 6 ships in a list, and they usually contain, at minimum, at least I would say 3 to 4 different chassis in that one list. There for it. They all have different types of dials on it, typically, along with it, different types of chassis abilities. So you get a bit of a hodgepodge of a mix of different chassis to help form your list to kind of deal with many different kind of address as many different scenarios that you could potentially encounter on the field with your list, depending on the chassis that you have on there.
All right. Yeah. Let's go ahead and let's rank them D through S. And Alex, I don't know, do you want to start this one off, Alex?
I can attempt. It's just so hard because like a salad list is so wide that it's like I can't even begin to try to define it, because you can, it kind of depends on whatever ships you bring. Like if you have a salad list that has an A-wing, they're inherently going to be a lot better at certain objectives than a salad list that's just as valid, but it has, Dutch instead of like Tycho, right? So I don't even know. Right, like it's just kind of tailored to whatever you like flying. I don't know, like the like what would you consider like that 6FO list, that one Worlds, right? Is that a salad list? Is that a swarmy?
I would actually consider that a swarm, mainly because the majority of the list was actually the TIE FO fighters. So because of that, the only ship difference in there was the TIE BA interceptor. That was the odd man in that particular list.
You had backdraft in there too. But
and the SF.
I mean, you had 4 ties. I get what you're saying there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Vader and the boys, is that a salad list? Right? Because that's Vader.
Yeah,
you got
typically,
3 TIE fighters and a Reaper. So that's also 3 types of ships. I don't know.
I consider that more of a beef list or an Alpha Strike type list. To me, that's more of an Alpha Strike or it's more of an Alpha Strike type list. And depending on how which one you put in there would depend on whether it's a beef. It could filter into a beef as well. Like a true salad list to me, I mean, you could say Django, Dirge, Grievous, and 404. That is probably a highly variable salad list. And if you want, I could go first. And it's only because I just fly that list. I've been flying that list.
Yeah.
Or,
I mean, I'm just...
or like the Siege of Coruscant list too that you see, right? That you get like 2 Orcs, a V-Wing, a Torrent. Like that's a salad list.
Okay.
Yeah, I would consider that a salad.
But like that Republic like defensive list flies inherently significantly different than something like Dirge, Grievous, Bomber, Droid, though.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I don't know. Someone else go first. This is
all right. I'll take it first. I'll take it first. So, to me, when we look at a salad list, because of how we're defining the actual, like how we define the salad is, you have a different piece that works for each of the other ones, each of the other pieces. So typically, you're not getting an extreme, like list that's just going to come in and blow you apart. You're not going to get a list that's going to come in and just drop you bombs. Again, we can use the Django, Grievous, Dirge type list if you would like to begin with, and then we can kind of branch out a little bit from there. So that one for assault, I give that one typically I'll give that one an A. It would help if I could click on my screen and not type assault. I would give that. Oh, I'm not Alex either. All right. I feel like Alex today. So I would give
sorry.
that list an A. And I say that because the ability for it to the way it performs, right, is because everything flies so differently. But in an assault, you just have to be near objective, so you're going to be able to be modded. All those ships typically have a different mechanic, and they have the ability to be super aggressive. If we were to consider that Republic Squad in assault, I would also say that's extremely good in assault because you could break up into 2 different parties. You don't have to be super connected if you don't want to. And you're able to cover a minimum 2 to 3 objectives depending on how you put them down. In chance, I would say in chance, this is where the one goes a little bit different than the other one, right? In chance, I give this a B, and I say that because you have to protect Django, because if you don't protect Django, you lose so many points. It just is highly, highly crazy how many points you lose. In that Republic, and you know what? Actually, JJ, I think that Republic list would not be a salad. I would actually consider that a beef list. Now that we talk about it, I kind of feel that
Born
that's
for this ability.
Yeah, because of the Born for this ability. If you took the Born for this ability away, you wouldn't have that list be beefy at all, and then it would probably be a little bit closer to a salad.
Okay.
And I would say the same thing in chance. That list has the ability to tank the shots, but you could get half points on every one of those ships, minus, let's say, Contrail, usually fairly easily. Contrail's like kind of the Contrail's the one ship I hate. I hate Contrail sometimes.
What did Contrail ever do? Contrail's great.
Die.
Not die.
Don't roll focus results. You'll be fine.
For salvage, I would say the same thing. Both those lists really are B tier in terms of salvage. You're gonna have one crate carrier, unless your opponent is focused like solely on Django or like one of the ships. You can literally can only really pick up the one crate at all. For scramble, I would give a salad list easily an A tier because you have enough ships that can do damage, enough ships that usually have 1 or 2 higher initiatives, and you have the ability to take a scramble action or 2. And I'll tell you what, you know what Django likes to do? He likes to scramble that stupid objective after you scrambled it. So you have no mods, and now I got a force point where I can just murder you. So that's my take on those. JJ?
Okay. So with assault, I actually give it a little bit of a lower, just slightly lower rating for it. So I'm kind of in between a B and an A for assault, and mainly because it really depends on what the salad is composed of, right? There's some salad lists that you're able to get a medium-sized base ship in there, and other salads that are just small base ships, right? And when it comes to assaults, if you start spreading out your salad list, just depending on the composition of it, you're going to lose those one-on-one like contentions against those medium bases. So you hurt a little bit on there. On the plus side, you're able to reliably get plenty of mods to assist you either on offense or defense with your salad list, especially if you have a good support ship in that mix to help out your salad, and you can do fairly well in assault there. So that's kind of why I'm between there. But just to kind of cover the generality of salad lists across the different factions, I'm going to go safer with a B rating for assault for that. Now, in chance engagement, I think you're able to leverage the different chassis to your advantage and kind of have your dedicated ships that your attackers to go in first, get into shots, and then you have your second wave of other ships that come in behind it to finish off opponents as they come, if you can layer your attack strategically that way. And typically, since you do have about between 4 to 6 ships depending on your salad, you're able to survive the gambit pretty well, and assuming that you can have a good combinations of roles in there, you're able to survive the onslaught for chance engagement usually, mainly by just maintaining your points even if you just give up half. So you can do fairly well in there. I think in chance it does get a B as well. It doesn't really dominate chance engagement, but it definitely can be very competitive. So I'll definitely give it a B for chance engagement. Salvage. Salvage, I think salad lists do very well in there. If you have typically in salad lists, you'll have ships that don't need to reposition or can't reposition, so that they become your crate carriers normally, while the rest of your ships act as those crate hunters that can go out and contest those crates, or at least remove them from your opposing carriers, while you can protect the crate carriers in your list there. Since they don't have to reposition, they generally just have the advantage of just being able to grab those and just continue on there. The list that I ran in Empire for a while, which was two X1s of Reaper and a Typh, or sorry, two TIE fighters did very well, able to my TIE fighters grab those crates as well as my Reaper and let my X1s go in and do as much damage as they could while being supported by the rest of the list. So I think then salvage, as long as you have those ships that can be those dedicated ones, they can do very, very well in salvage. So I think I'm actually going to give them an A for this, because they do have the flexibility of having those dedicated salvage carriers in that list there. For scramble, it is going to be very dependent on the initiative of the ships they have in your list, as well as the amount of ships they have in there. If you're able to set it up correctly, you can block your opponent from contesting particular scenarios and essentially swarm a particular area with your list to discourage your opponent from going and claiming those and basically chasing them away. And you always usually have a spare ship that can go and claim an objective, even if it's at a lower initiative, and just have the threats of the higher initiatives to deter anybody from attempting to claim those objectives at a higher initiative. It gets even better when you have ships that have the force, that have those passive mods that can still claim it on there. For a scramble, I would definitely give it an A. You have that flexibility of punishing those who go after the objectives or grabbing the objectives and defending it fairly well.
All right, Alex, you're up.
Oh boy. Okay.
Or do you want to pass? You could pass, I guess, if you want.
Well, it's tough, right? So, like, if you have a solid list, I think it's just going to be inherently better than any other list archetype there is, because it's not really an archetype, right? You're probably bringing whatever is the best at whatever, and then you can kind of tailor it to however playstyle you like. If you like alpha strikes, you could bring in, the more alpha strikey ships in your salad. If you don't, you like the chase, you can run away, bring in other ships. Ooh. So that being said, I'd probably give him an A for assault, right? I'm assuming for the salad list, you're going off some sort of inherent efficiency, and you're taking like the best things at what they do. Like Nathan Ides list, right? He had like CLT Anakin and Contrail and like Kickback and Jagged Wolf. Like you get a little bit beefy with those, but also they're very flexible. You got a couple arcs, you got a Fee Wing, you got CLT Anakin, which you don't see. I kind of like stuff like that. I mean, my list that I brought to Worlds is a salad list. It's Falcon Poe, 2 pods, and a T-70, and an A-Wing. So, on Chance Encounter, I'd probably give it a B. You are bringing the best of the best, and generally they're higher cost in points. So, on Salvage, I think a B, because you're probably going to bring ships that are good at salvage, but you're going to also bring a bunch of ships that aren't good at salvage. And then you have to try to rationalize if you're going to go after generating crits for this, or if you're just going to ignore the salvage entirely, like the 3 scum ship list, kind of stuff like that. And for Scramble, I'd also give it a B. Again, you'd have to tailor your list to either having passive mods like Ray Gunner, like having the Force, inherent rerolls, some sort of defensive rerolls to be able to give up your action like that if you're let's say Grievous, right? So It really all kind of depends on what you're bringing.
All right. Well, let's move on to beefless. And just a quick reminder, beefless have staying power, typically have larger medium bases in them that have lots of health. You get extra mods or complex, intricate abilities. The ships obviously can stay around. High health, spreading out the damage. Sometimes they can be lower initiative, but similar initiatives typically to play with. So Assault, I give a beef list an S tier, which I think is the first S tier that we've given. But I feel beef lists do very well at Assault. Because there's so much health and you could just collect objective points and you could do your weird shenanigans all over the place for that. Chance engagement, I will give it a C though. Half points are very easy to get on the ships, and because they're beefier, they're not going to be quite as maneuverable for that. Salvage, I would give it a B. They can pick up crates. They want to pick up crates to some extent, but not quite so much. Now some of our beef lists have the 2 agilities in them, so sadly saying 2 agility is better than the 1 agility and can typically carry that crate longer. Guess we lost JJ. And Scramble, I would also give it probably a B as well. They have the ability to not have to worry about it, but if you do focus fire down one, you're screwed. And a lot of times in a beef list, you're not having a lot of high initiatives, unless you throw an ace in there with it. So,
Man, do I feel slightly different than you do on this rankings.
all right, let's go, baby. Let's go.
I would say A for Assault, just because they have the staying power. You're not going to alpha them off the Assault point. And if you're having a beefy list, generally it's like a medium base, a large base, that helps. But I actually I would say like an A tier for Chance. And like the whole point of bringing a beef list is that it's tough to kill completely, right? Yes, you do bleed half points, but you're not going to bleed the whole points. If we take like Boy Mauler, for example, a little bit kind of a weird example for beef, but like he has 4 hull. You half health him, he gives up 1 point. And then you have to kill him for the other 2. It's like that's the whole like process on like that 6 ship FO. Or the SOC kind of Republic list, right? It's just you have to grind them down, and when you get to half points, you only get so many. That's kind of my theory on the Chance. I think they excel at that. Like if I can give them like an A plus, I would give them an A plus. I don't think it would be quite S tier for Chance, but I think that's by far their best one.
Okay.
Salvage, I'd probably give them a C, just generally because they can take hits, and that's what they do. But they tend to have lower agility, so you can probably hit a crit through on salvage. And for Scramble, I'd probably give them a B. If they have a lot of high health, they're generally tankier, right? So they can probably give up their action for a round to take that Scramble objective there. So,
all right, is JJ back? I don't know if JJ's back or not.
He looks like he is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So beef list here. So this one's a little complex. So I do agree with you guys in terms of how they perform in Assault, right? Typically, you do have those large base ships or medium base ships that are self-sustaining, typically with force users, or they just have a lot of efficiency with getting extra tokens on them that generally helps them have modifications for offense and defense. So because of that, they can easily contest multiple objectives at once while being able to have that offensive threat to deter opponents from going to go claim them there. Your opponent has to dedicate more resources to try to just contest a single point, let alone trying to spread out and grab more objectives than your ships can. So for that, I think that they are definitely an A tier for Assault. I do agree with Alex and beef ships can, although they can get half pointed generally, especially with a concentrated attack. I think that if you have a very good build that allows you to maintain your defensiveness, it can be extremely hard to kill a ship that can easily reposition to arc dodge and to also have shots when it can leave, namely like fire sprays. You know, Boba Fett having that rear arc, or you take a look at the decimators that can have extra reinforce and just have so much hull, so that it takes such a great concentration and effort to take them down. It is really hard to take down those ships, and we've seen plenty of games where they just stay in the mix within that range 2 bubble, and they can still survive to the end of the game, and it becomes a race against the clock to try to take out those ships there. So I think that they can definitely do well in chance. Salvage is where they do very, very poorly. Typically, you have low ship counts, and if you're relying on repositions, and namely the ships that I'm thinking about is like the fire sprays, the Falcons. Those are very big ships that rely on repositioning in order to minimize the amount of shots going back. Having a crate attached to that particular ship is almost like a death sentence to those ships, because they typically don't want to be locked down or be predictable. So it is much more difficult for those ships to maintain their defensiveness while keeping those crates. And typically, if they also are very large, like the decimators or the Falcons, they can easily lose those crates to critical hits. So they do very, very poorly. I'm actually going to give them. I'm going to give those lists a D, because they unless they're actively hunting to take out crate carriers, which generally doesn't favor them, it's hard for them to keep up with the points race in salvage for that. Now, when it comes to scramble, I think they do very decently. Again, having those passive mods to allow them to still be good on offense or on defense allows them to spend their actions to basically target those crates and have a big enough body to block opponents from grabbing the crates out from in front of them, or rather scramble points. So I think they do very decently well. So I think that they would be about a B for scramble for this archetype.
All right. Let's move on to control. Control lists essentially want to force your opponent to make subpar moves. They like to deny space. They're usually dropping bombs. I think we forgot when we did this jams. They're also a big jamming list. They reduce the ship's ability to perform the desired functions. They like to take away ship's agency, that type of a thing. Mine is going to be easy for this one. This is just, to me, this is B tier across the board. Like, to me, they control lists don't excel or fail at anything else. I think in a B tier world, if you put it in a really good player's hand, they will do very, very well with it. And I guess I'm going to be really gutsy here, and I'm going to say Crispy's list that he flew for Worlds, I consider to be a control / salad type list. And the reason I say that is because in its agency, right, it can do very well at swarm tactic scene. So they have a couple of high initiatives to take away your initiative wants. It has the ability to jam you all over the board. It has the ability to ionize you, and once Wrath gets behind you, can double tap you. You aren't going to have a very good day. So to me, control lists are B tier across the board. I don't feel they excel super well at assault because they have to be by certain objectives. And once you control an opponent to be by those objectives, you got to murder them. So if you don't have murder capabilities, you're out of luck. Chance is the same way. Chance is a little bit harder because depending on the ships will depend on how much health they have and whether they do well. Control lists probably are looking to half point most of the ships or kill 1 or 2 of the ships and then collect the center objective point. Salvage is kind of the same thing. They can hold a crate, but they're probably not all holding crates. And the same thing with Scramble, because you can have a high initiative, but you don't always have a high initiative inside of a control list. Typically, you don't have an Anakin running around with bombs on him unless you're flying a Y-Wing Anakin, that type of a thing. So I guess give them a B across the board. So who's next?
I'll go. I don't necessarily disagree because like control lists kind of are going to fly the same way regardless of the objective. But I think I would give them a C for chance, just because they are not typically built on damaging and destroying ships. They're built on like kind of debuffing them so they can play the objectives a little bit more. But in that way, I would give them an A for salvage because, again, their whole point is controlling the other person's list. And if you know where people are going for salvage, or if you can pop off and have regular crit generation and stuff like that for salvage, I think that's far more useful. The other two I'd probably put at a B, honestly. Scramble might be a C. It's like a B minus kind of thing, just because it really depends on if your ships can actually afford to lose their actions for that round.
JJ?
But, if you ionize people, you're probably free, right? So
yeah, you're definitely free.
Yeah, so I think out of most of these archetypes, I think that the control lists tend to suffer quite a bit here. For assaults, I do give them a B. They do have the ability to, especially in a good control list that can really leverage ionization, as well as like giving out strain, being able to limit the effectiveness of your opponent while they're going into trying to contest an objective point is really strong. However, sometimes those lists tend to lack the offensive output to eliminate those ships completely, so they can lose the point race easy in that point. Or if they're unable to catch their opponents because the other opponent's a little more agile with double repositions, then they kind of lose their effectiveness there. But more often than not, they can be effective in the right hand, so I do give them a B for that. In chance engagement, I do have to agree with Alex. It is C tier. Yeah, you do have to worry about just a single objective in the center, and try to control your opponents there. But a good a list that can put out damage is going to win the damage race and probably break the control, the most critical control piece there. And if they're high initiative, they can essentially eliminate the threat of the control by initiative killing a particular ship and working their way down that way. And I think that's where they falter. So definitely a C for chance engagement there. Salvage, I definitely agree with Alex. Give them an A. If you have a good mix of ions, a mag pulse warhead to generate those crits, they will stop you from controlling those crates. It is just really hard to try to arc dodge those ships, especially if you have a crate. You're not going to be boosting or barrel rolling everywhere, so the player who's running a control list is able to control where you're going to go, or at least make a good determination of where that ship is going to go with the crate, and be able to track them down and make them lose that crate very easily. They are very good for that particular scenario because typically they don't need to reposition. And if they have a good support piece that can provide them target locks to enable their munitions, or get tokens elsewhere, they're going to do very, very well in salvage. Now for scramble, that's a little tough. I think I should go with a C, because typically, unless they have a very good support ship, it's going to be tough for them to use their actions to contest the objective and still have the ability to use their control pieces, either through target locks to use munitions, or to have tokens to effectively use their like ion cannons to help control the ships from going in there. A very good player can definitely get it off, but more likely than not, there's not that many lists that is very good at that, and also being able to control those objectives by consistently scrambling them to maintain control of them. So I think that's the Achilles heel of that list. It's just the action economy, and for that I give them a C.
All right. Well, I think that does it. We are not going to do the dual class. I don't feel at this current time, I don't feel it's a smart move because you could be dual classing for everything.
Yeah.
And I think it would take a mix of them. Maybe if JJ feels adventurous enough, he'll take this and put it in a new sheet and maybe take a mix of all of them and tell us like all the different ranges. Maybe we'll do that.
What is a dual class?
So basically, we just
go ahead.
I say we defined it as basically a list that fits more than one archetype.
Okay.
That's really about as much as we kind of dived into it. It's again like that crispy list to me is kind of a little bit of both, right? It's a dual list, a dual class list, and when it needs to be, it can transition between the two different types of lists. Typically, you would see like salads and controls, or salads and beef type lists. I think
I get it. I see what it is. So it'd be like, alpha beef, right? Like we had that for a while.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. So I don't think we're gonna rank it though tonight. I don't think that's a smart move.
Yeah, I don't even know how to differentiate that from like a salad list.
Yeah.
I think it would take us a little bit longer than I care to spend doing.
It's respectable.
Well, all right. For the last segment that I really wanted to cover, and I want to preface this segment as we close the show out, and I want to preface this segment and say this is not us trying to tear AMG or FFG down. That is not what my goal is tonight. My goal is to honestly examine kind of some of the changes that AMG put in place and see if they accomplished some of their goals that they set out to do. Some of this is going to be a little harder to do because AMG has only done two public interviews since, one with Fly Better and one with Gold Squadron, since they've taken over. Rumor has it Nick has a interview scheduled, and if he ever wants to tap on any of our shoulders, any one of us would happily join him for that.
It's not a rumor, that is confirmed. He will be doing it.
Okay, so it's confirmed now. Okay.
He said that on my podcast.
So it's kind of one of those things where they've been somewhat quiet on their front, and I don't know if that's a tactic they chose to do or not, or if they're just that restricted by Disney that they have a harder time eccentricating on what they want to talk about. But what I wanted to do tonight is I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about where we were in 2.0 and where we are now in 2.5. And really the bigger focus is not going to be, let's pick apart every single little thing that they've done. One of the biggest complaints about 2.0, right, was points, you had points fortressing, right? And that had to do with bidding, had to do with you getting an initiative as well, and then just being able to kind of run away. And I'm not talking about, the stupid Star Viper list that could just sit in a corner. That's obviously something they wanted to address, that they address very well. And I don't think we have a question in that. But one of the big things, right, is that they felt aces were a very strong list, right? And they could do a lot of different things. You could take a huge bid. You could always go second and always have like perfect information. And they wanted to say is, hey, this is a little bit more of a game of chance. And let's introduce some new elements, such as scenarios to the bid here. And they also wanted to do a little bit different with saying, okay, hey, how do we make it easier for any players to get into? What I want to do is talk through, did they accomplish some of those goals, right? And we'll go through kind of what we know, and then we could talk about what we don't know or what we speculate to know. But we want to talk a little bit about where everything kind of has fallen, and is there been some unnecessary fallout or some unnecessary changes that might have affected the game that didn't do what they exactly wanted them to do. Now, does that make sense, guys? Is that if I kind of explained it in a way that makes sense? Okay. So to kind of begin, essentially is, like I said, FFG had a bidding system. We all remember that.
Mm-hmm.
You could take 100 and what was the lowest? I think 178 points was the lowest points I'd ever seen. Is that the lowest you've all ever seen, or was there lower than that?
I think there's one ridiculous list that's like 148 points and was like literally just Ben
like
and Boba.
Oh, I thought one was like Supernatural Anakin, Supernatural Obi-Wan. That was like a
40
something point bid too.
Yeah. It was some ridiculous low amount of initiative.
Those are the extreme variants.
Yeah, you can fit like 2 additional ships in there, basically. Yeah.
When I did Chertik, Grievous, Sunfuck, I had an 8-point bid, and I think that's the lowest, like feasibly normally people would go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think I took more than a 10-point bid ever in my list. I don't think I ever did that. Maybe it's just because I'm a CIS player.
So. You didn't actually need to.
Yeah. But I don't think there was a ton of bidding I personally did. But also that was when I was newer to the game. But that was one of the things AMG actually had openly stated they felt was an issue. They also felt the specific ability for a player to always go first or second was an issue. They fixed that with they fixed it by giving bidding points to your opponent, and then they fixed the other piece of it by saying you're going to roll every bloody churn, which we all thought was going to be hell until we all had to actually do it. And it's really not that big of a deal anymore ever. It's literally, 3 more seconds a churn? Maybe 10?
If you even need to roll it.
Yeah. And 80%, half the time we don't even need to roll them. The only time, like, I roll because I have a higher initiatives, and it feels like we're seeing a lot of high initiatives right now. So those are 2 of the things that they did. They also implemented scenarios, right? That created it so you can't really points fortress, you can't hide, you have to be by objectives or your opponent can score points, and so you can't just fly away into the corner. So JJ, is there anything else that AMG had attempted to do that they were looking to try to change that we missed?
No, not really. I mean, as far as AMG came in when they introduced to the 2.5 rules, and they basically gave the deficit scoring. The only other part of it was, and it's really not related to bidding, but basically taking out the half health rules, or the regen rule for not being able to recover your lost points. That was some of the biggest changes that we got in 2.5 once they transitioned over, which did have a fairly big impact in the game, especially that now that we have 3 scenarios with no half points anymore, and chance is the only place where you can do that. Kind of took the sting away from that particular change into the game there as well. Now, I think that one of the things that we do have to discuss, or at least mention in this discussion, is the initial interview that they gave when they were introducing the new rule system for 2.5, and their philosophy behind how they envisioned the game coming, like the squad building for the game would be. So essentially, when the game first came out, one of the visions that they had for the game was that they wanted to really empower the named pilots to make a bigger impact in the game by giving them everybody their own individual loadout value separate from their points cost, and that way each ship is able to equip, have all the flashy tech, and because they are those named pilots, or the well-renowned pilots in their particular factions, and thus they should have all that equipment versus a no-name generic pilot fresh out of the academy that shouldn't have very little or no loadout whatsoever. And that was the design philosophy that they wanted to go through going forward, for 2.5.
So, with that being said, they also released a pack that had a lot of high initiatives in it. Definitely some 5s, not as many 6s, I don't think. But a lot of 5 initiative and 4 initiatives. So,
Mhm.
I guess we're going to kick this off. We're going to let Alex go first. Do you feel it's okay that we see this many high initiatives? Do you feel that these changes have created the high initiative you need? Or are people just taking the high initiatives because they're fun to play?
Well, X-Wing has always had this like high initiative thing ever since like early 1.0. Like you had, that's why like old 1.0 Whisper would take veteran instincts, right, to bump her up to past everyone else's, and like Nim, and it's always been about. It's just the inherent ability of moving last, shooting first, always super good. And occasionally they would give like lower initiative pilots much better like abilities to kind of compensate. So I don't know. I just want to say that it's always been sort of a high initiative game, and now like high initiative is prevalent. Like right, like you have Vader, you have well, it used to be Wedge. You don't have them too much anymore, but you got Django, right? You got Poe and an X-wing or a Falcon or whatever. Like it's just inherently good, and like if you make them cheap enough and have like a lot of loadout, which they've been doing, right? Like a customizable Vader, although he's not played too much because they have Boy Vader out there, right? But like he has 21 points worth of loadout. That's a lot for a ship that's just gonna move last. Like Falcon Poe is 25 points worth of loadout. That's a lot. Wedge, was like 18 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, yeah. So you just have it kind of scales up that way, like which I understand because you want your Django's out there, you want Vader being there, like Luke. It's a 5, but he's got like an ass load of loadout, right? He's got 22. Like he do whatever he wants. Like I understand where they're coming from that, and it's not just super foreign to have like that's one of your required skills in X-Wing is when if you're a better player is if you can outmaneuver the people who move after you. And it's just the way they did it with road rules. I like it a lot. I think it's a great step just because, man, if you lose that bid by 1 point, it's just you have borderline no hope. But now, if you bring in a 5 or a 6, you know there's going to be other ships overlapping. Roughly 50% of the time you move after them. It's a great feeling. Like I think they have done a pretty good job at reeling it in. Maybe some of these higher initiative ships should probably either get a reduction in loadout, which is probably what I would lean towards, or a bump up in points. As much as I love Falcon Poe, why does he have 25 points worth of loadout?
Yeah, why does Lando have 8 have 20?
Right. Like
who thought that was a good idea?
Like Django, sure, I get him. He's got a pretty solid ability. He's at I6 and is also a fire spray. Why the hell is he at 27 points worth of loadout?
Yeah.
So I think they've done a very good job at this so far. Like it's not like an auto loss every time you go against other aces when you have aces. And I think they did a really good job on that. but they might want to just curtail a little bit of that loadout. Just a little bit, you know. Does
So-
Vader need more than pattern analyzer and, you know, afterburners? And FCS, you know, just make it 17 points, not 21.
So to me, I think it's the I think the answer is twofold, right? So when you compare to what the meta was like before the 2.5 change to what it is now, I believe that we actually see a lot less high initiative ships now than what used to be in 2.0. Now, here's um, the main reason why. I think we're starting to see a lot more Initiative 4 and Initiative 5 pilots because, especially the newer ones, right? You know, the Battle of Gavin pack, the Siege of Coruscant pack introduced these really good, and the Hot Shots and Aces pack as well introduced some really good, affordable Initiative 5 pilots for all the factions that are becoming auto includes because you can get more ships into your list there. You know, despite the fact because we're able to fit more ships that are at those initiatives there, they tend to be favored more because of that, right? Their availability for being able to include it into your list and get good quality pilots out of it there. Um, you know, if you were to increase the cost of those particular pilots that came out, then all of a sudden you're forcing that player to make a choice on whether or not, or like really evaluate if their ability and their current loadout is worth the same cost as a similar ship at the same point cost, right? Like for instance, if we were to increase the value of Battle Yavin Vader to the customizable Vader, I'm pretty sure we're not going to see that Vader as much. We would probably see a half, if not 75% reduction, as people would probably prefer the multiple action Vader that can contest an objective, grab a target, lock and focus, or barrel roll and focus if you needed to, and still have hate equipped, still have afterburners equipped, or pattern analyzer, whatever you want. That Vader is worth a lot more, but you're paying 7 points for it, which means that now you have to make a sacrifice somewhere else in your list where you can't fit one of your Initiative 5 ships on that and maybe settle with like a generic Black Squadron tie for 2 points because that's where you're going to make that sacrifice there. Um, so I think that just the cost of it is what's making this big drive for what the meta is now for these high initiative ships. But when you take a look at other factions and other lists that are doing very well, I'm looking namely at the Siege of Coruscant pack for the Republic. You see the Wolf and Jag. Those are the two staples right now for the Republic that have the Born for this ability. They're Initiative 3 and Initiative 4, and we're seeing them because, again, they're very cost-effective ships that are cheap. They carry a lot of hull, and their abilities are phenomenal, and they can fit into all different archetypes. For the Republic, you can either run it with a very good high initiative aces and Anakin and Obi-Wan, or you can fill it out more with more lower initiative ships like Click and Contrail, and still have, you know, room for a lot of other ships. And that's the decision that the player has to make because those ships can cover or react to a lot more scenarios and um, objectives that you have to complete in the game there. So I think it's more that the cost or the availability of those pilots is what's driving to us to what we're seeing right now for the high initiative.
So because to me it feels like what we're seeing is high initiatives pushing out low initiatives unless they're like on the high tier end of the spectrum. So for example, Finn, you take Finn in an I2 because Finn has an amazing ability with his loadout. If Finn couldn't take Perceptive Copilot, we probably wouldn't be seeing people take as many Finns. It just you still would, but it's not at 3 points. There is other option like Yeager, right? But if I have to choose between taking, like earlier, you had no Finn in your list because I told you to make it for fun list. But in a serious list, you aren't taking Yeager over Finn, right? But that's because Finn, with his loadout, is really amazing. Once you take that ability and the loadout away, to some extent, are you going to take Finn? I'm not taking Finn over Yeager. I'm taking Yeager because Yeager's an I5. You know why Separatist Dirge is good? He's an I5. He is a bloody I5. So you have at minimum a 50% chance of being able to bullseye somebody. And at best, you're probably looking at a 70% chance to get that bullseye off if you're a good player. Not me, but other people, you're probably able to get that off. But I will tell you, Contraband behind somebody with crack shot and a focus is pretty totes. I will admit that.
But also, sorry, like also you get things like in the First Order, right? You have like Scorch and DT, they're I4. It's just their ability is really good and they're pretty cheap. So I feel like it's more of an efficiency kind of thing, and then being I5 and I6 is just like a super bonus because you don't have to be at the game to reposition I6.
So yes and no. I think yes and no to that. I think I agree with you a little bit because it's the same thing with Grievous. Like you're taking out maneuver on Grievous, right? Like, and he's an I4, but I would consider an I4 on that low scale of initiative too, right? And I think you're right. You do take the DTs and you take the Scorches of the world because their abilities outweigh some of the disadvantages of having a high initiative. But a lot of times you're taking Malorus too. So if you have to choose between those three, are you going to not take Malorus over one of those three?
Honestly, I'd rather take the other two over Malorus, but that's just me.
So according to statistics, Alex, you take Malorus over either of those two.
No, according to statistics, people just put Malorus in every list. But
that's what the meta's showing us is that the I5 plus that ability gives her the ability to be taken over some of those other ships. And I'll pick on, and again, I hate using Crispy all the time, but I'm going to pick on Crispy a little bit because Crispy had one I3 slot. He did not take DT or Scorch. He took Malorus. And he explains why he did that because of that initiative plus that ability.
Well, it worked really well in the particular list he was building. It's not like, he also brought Whirlwind at I3. Granted, he swarm taxed him up to 6, but like it's still an I3. And like Gideon has is a 4. His initiative doesn't really matter because he's just the Zai shuttle into and anything anyways. But like
he's jamming, he's giving out calculates, and
I mean he's very useful, but like the initiative is not what makes that ship good.
No, exactly. But my theory is, and I was looking through some of the statistics, and statistically showing we are seeing more I4s than I3s right now, period, all hands down. And if we consider I4 through I6 high initiative, we are definitely seeing the majority of the field is that type of list. And we are seeing AMG put out more I5-ish type ships than before. So really kind of what I wanted to boil down to is by changing some of the road rules, right? And moving that way, did we create a meta where we see more higher initiatives pushing out lower initiatives than we did before?
Honestly, I don't think anything has changed. There's always been a lot of high initiative. Also, I wouldn't consider 4 like a high initiative. It's got to be like 5 or 6.
Okay.
Just in general, but like I feel like it's always been like this high initiative kind of thing. Only the people who brought lower initiatives are either bringing it because they can fit 7 of them in a list, or they happen to have like a really, really good ability, like 1.0 Biggs, or you had to shoot him, and that's literally the only reason why you brought Biggs.
So, and again, okay. So let's stick with the 5 and 6s, right? And you're saying is we've always seen that, and it's not really much different now per se. So then the question becomes is when AMG worked towards fixing some of these other things, did they either not consider this an issue, or did the fixes they put in place, which is what my theory was, is that they put fixes in place to try to get us to play more variably, right? Like to play more fun lists. There you go, and stop playing some of these, like I don't know. Somebody's just the things.
I think what they did is that they give people who were playing the high initiatives a chance to actually play against other high initiatives with the road rules. That's what it is. In all honesty, I think is they got the bid doesn't matter kind of thing. Everything is like 50-50 to actually make it so the people who were getting screwed initially at high initiative have a chance to actually play a semi-competitive game.
You just like hit your hand
Yeah.
on the mic.
My nail got caught on the mic. Ow.
Hey, JJ had too much vodka tonight.
JJ, how long have you been playing? I don't know actually how long you've been playing, but it seems like you've been playing for a long time, right?
Yes, I've actually started the playing X-Wing right when it just came out, day one.
Wow.
I had a very bad time on my first game. I'll tell you that. It discouraged me, but it wasn't until after the first coverage of GSP's Worlds that I decided to go into competitive play. So, but I mean, just in general, right? And for the conversation of like, are we seeing, a lot of more higher initiative pilots on it? I think that, number one, for the changes that AMG was trying to implement in order to balance the game more for seeing the play, it definitely forced a lot of people at the beginning who were choosing to fly certain archetypes to force to learn how to play a game from both sides of the fence, right? Because there are people who are really good at building 200-point lists and just reacting to ace play, right? By setting up kill boxes for certain aces that in a way that they couldn't escape because they always anticipated going second. And now we go into a world where you might end up going second and you can't really set up a kill box because that ship gets to move first and get out of that box before it's formed, and preventing you from getting that box set up correctly, right? And vice versa, right? You get ace players who always relied on going second to now being forced to going first with the road roll, and now they have to learn how to try to anticipate what their opponent is going to do ahead of time and react that way. So we're seeing now more and more the people who have the experience of being on both sides of the fence with road rolls and reacting to it. And obviously people who prefer that level of or that type of play of always having the higher initiatives as much as possible in their list to try to max out as much as they can for it, and they'll still do fairly decently well, but it comes at the cost of maybe not having as many ships as possible, especially now when you start factoring in scenarios, and that forces them to evolve their gameplay in the game. So having higher initiatives doesn't necessarily always mean that you're going to do very well in matches, because sometimes you sacrifice your points for multiple ships just to have just those high initiative pieces in your list. So I just think that we're starting to get to a place where people have evolved their way that they're playing the game, and now are starting to use those tools to maximize the amount that they can with those high initiative pilots that are cheap enough that you can fit multiple of them in the list.
Yeah, because my feeling is that we're seeing higher initiatives and we're seeing lots more people run them comparatively.
It's very easy because like if you're the only I6 like on the field, you really shouldn't be getting shot at.
Yeah.
Like if you know what you're doing, right? Like it's much easier. But that's actually one of the reasons I was actually debating between going with Kaz or Versio for my worlds list. Was I'm like, well, Kaz has a higher initiative. He's probably not going to get alpha striked off the board. It's better against the field because it's high initiative. But I also hate fireballs, so I'm going to go with the D70.
I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, so it's too. Like I definitely factored that into the list that I was building, and I built around that, right? Like I have a 6 who you cannot catch on the board. Good luck. I have a 6, I have a 5, and I brought Lulo. And because a lot of people were saying, like, between Lulo and Kaz, and I'm like, I want Lulo because I want the I5 shot. I mean, Lulo's great too because you just 5 straight reverse, but like, it's it's mostly the I-5. Like, I can take Greer and have a better action efficiency, right? I can move and then rotate for free, but that's not an I-5.
Yeah.
I'd rather take the Lulo, and I think that's a definite factor to consider when you're playing.
Well, and that was kind of my theory is, and again, this is not like a knock on AMG. To me, it just feels like they have opened that door up for more people to take higher initiatives that we didn't have before. And maybe you're right. Maybe it's because more people have the availability with Road to not have to worry about bidding or just playing 3 ace style ships. Though Ollie likes to still play his ace ship, so
I mean, Cody
kudos to
does
him.
too.
Yeah. So like, and the bigger thing to me becomes is this creating an issue? And this is what we're going to end with here in the next couple of minutes. Is it okay? Should we be working towards creating a more diverse meta with not having to rely on the higher initiatives? And some of me wonders personally if we change the pointing structure again, which they probably will never do. But it feels if we did change that pointing structure to create more ability to either half point or the ability to have up to 40 points where we could point cost some of these other ships better, would we be able to change some of that meta and make it so that like more I3s and I2s and stuff like that are viable?
Yeah, honestly, I think you just bring down a little bit of the loadout on the higher initiative ships, and they'd be fine. Like, they're always going to be part of the game, and you don't. It's just they don't need to have like. You will bring like customizable Vader, right? Like, he's really good. If you didn't have Boy Vader, like withstanding, right? If you have customizable Vader, you're gonna bring him because he's really good. You need 21 points worth of loadout for him to be good. You need like 17 points of loadout. So if you just like trim that down a little bit, I think that will help with the efficiency of the higher initiatives, because I think they're very efficient right now, and they're the balance a little bit out of whack, but not like crazy.
JJ, what's your ending thoughts?
Ultimately, the lack of granularity is the one thing that's really just stopping the game from evolving further, and that's stopping the meta for the game in evolving further. And it there's just certain ships that feel too expensive to be brought in, even though they have fantastic abilities, and there are ships that are too cheap that are really good. And that in order to balance the game properly, where you're not seeing a constant amount of the same pilots over and over and over in the same list, is to have that little bit of granularity where it's just in that point where you'll consider it might be too expensive for certain lists, but it might be just the right price for others, and you're forced to make choices between what's available at those point costs, and that will cause the meta to change as people come up with different combination of pilots that maybe we don't see as often, and will allow the greater amount of variety for the game for all the factions.
It will never get as bad as 1.0, like
oh god no golly
shenanigans, because that at that point at that game, people were bringing 9s, which was the highest pilot skill at the time, bringing it up to 11 with veteran instincts, just so they could shoot a PS
5 straight
cruise missile. Yeah, like
5
straight cruise missile.
A 5 straight cruise missile. Golly, I hated those crap.
Yeah, those shenanigans like that. But also in the same thing, like in Empire in 1.0, you had Ryad, right, who was like a 5, which was so low no one ever like compared. No one ever wanted to take it, but like Ryad did really, really well. Like it just kind of depends if your ability is good enough to, I guess, overtake the handicap that is being a lower initiative. And they just need to work on that a little bit. Just adjust the loadout points just slightly, and I think it'll be pretty good. Like it'll be like a solid state of the game. Like
Yeah,
a
so
huge
build-
part of X-Wing is being able to handle aces without being an ace yourself.
Yeah, build your own Vader in 2.0 was 86 points. If you could get all the stuff that you couldn't actually get all the stuff, but if you could get all the stuff that you get on Build Your Own Vader now, it was 86 points of your list. So,
Well, 2.0 now is so wildly different than 2.5. Like I'm missing like whole ships on like a Republic list that I've built just because of how much upgrades and stuff that I was able to bring.
Yeah.
But
yeah, because essentially that was 43% of your list, and now it is 35%.
roughly
So,
over a third.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
It's definitely gotten way cheaper than it should be. Yeah.
yeah, there is a point to be made that maybe some like ships in general are a little bit too cheap. But if it's hovering around 4 to 5 ships, I think that's just normal for the game at this point. Like we don't need to go back to 3 and 4 ship lists being the prominent one.
Can I get my 2 ship list again?
No, 3 ship minimum.
Damn it.
2 ship list, that's fine because you're forking over like 4 points, right?
Well, not yes and no. Yeah, that depends on who you run. Give me a 2-point option, and it's a little different.
Django Zam and just fork over 3 points. I think I'm fine with that, honestly.
Depends if they up Django to 9 points, it'll be giving up 2 points. You just put Iron Assembler in there, and it's like a 2-ship list. But anyway, all right. Well, that kind of concludes the discussion I wanted to have. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We will be back next week at 9 p.m. Eastern to talk about more Star Wars X-Wing on Planning Phase Syndicate.
Go.
With that being said, thank you. Have a good night, and we will see you next week.